you've got criteria for what a Dominican is, fail me immediately. I have no interest in conforming to anyone's doctrinary bullshit, to their fucking perejil tests. I don't give a fuck. Cool. If there's an A Dominican, I'm an F Dominican, and I don't care, because all of these formulas are fucking really weird acts of identitarian violence. They're bullshit. That's not the way communities function. That's not the way communities work. Narratives of consolation, very cruel narratives of consolation. I have no interest. I like to say I'm just a terrible Dominican. Whatever it is that you think is Dominican, I'm not a part of it. Cool. Now I can be myself.
Saludos, familia. Welcome to Tambora Dialogues. Tonight we have a truly special program lined up for you. Joining us is none other than Junot Díaz, a voice that has profoundly influenced modern literature with his vibrant, incisive narratives that often explore the complexities of Dominican American identity. Junot is a Pulitzer Prize-winning author known for his compelling storytelling and richly drawn characters. And today we will explore a range of topics that touch the heart of Dominicanidad, as well as the enduring legacy of Trujillo in Dominican culture, in our politics, and how these shadows from the past continue to shape the present. Junot will also share insights into his latest fiction piece published in The New Yorker, giving us a peek into his creative process and the themes that drive his work. So tune in, settle in, and prepare for an enlightening conversation with one of the most significant literary figures of our time. Dialogues, Juno. Un placer tenerte aquí con nosotras.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
So, we begin every episode of our videos and podcasts with the question of how the personal is political. And throughout your career and your literary work, you've spoken to the realities of the immigrant experience, especially our Dominican diaspora immigrant experience. And as one of the co-founders of VONA, Voices of Our Nation, you've created a vehicle for the voices of writers of color to be nurtured. Was there a moment where you consciously made the decision to have your art and your work outside of writing be political, or have the two always been intertwined?
It's just a very interesting question. And I think also it's almost like we have to periodize it, because we have to understand that there was a very long moment where activism and any kind of community work was not remotely viewed as any kind of commodity. In other words, that if you began as a writer to talk about the political dimension, it was considered just like not on, as they say in English, right? And people would just put you in a box. You were this political, this kind of radical sort of person. Now, I mean, and I'm not saying positive or negative. I think it's just the nature of how these things change. Now you have actors in Marvel movies who are like, have a kind of a radical online persona. That wasn't the baseline in those days. If you were an activist, you were really a minority. And this idea of kind of politicizing certain kinds of kind of aesthetic practices was really viewed as kind of, not only viewed as kind of marginal, but also just highly disruptive and really kind of abnormal in a way. So for a long time, I started publishing in '96. There was a sense that I was just kind of this kind of, there was a very small group of us who were kind of committed in that way. And, I'm telling you, I can't tell you how often we would be at conferences or at panels and people would just roll their eyes at us. They were like, oye, pero estos tigres tan loquísimos. And I think part of it was, part of it was just that I had come out of a certain kind of tradition. The other part of it was that the time, I just came up in Rutgers State School at a kind of a period of time where there was a lot of professors who would encourage that kind of activity, who kind of encourage that kind of, line between what your activism is and what your art, and how you could combine these two. And it was just, I think it was in the gestalt at that period for someone like me specifically.
Mhm.
Uh, the reality was that kind of, you know, the reality was is that most people didn't give a fuck and didn't care, and that was cool. It was kind of not unexpected. We weren't doing it for likes at all. In fact, we knew that that was gonna sort of put us on the outs in some ways, and it didn't mean we were noble for doing it. We just kind of like were young and naive, and we just felt like it was important.
It's
Um,
something that you wanted to say.
yeah, and I just felt like it was part of a larger community of conversation.
Mhm.
I didn't think necessarily we were right. I believed in us, but I also thought it was just a part of a larger conversation that you needed all these voices together. It wasn't that we assumed that we had the correct path. That's impossible. The president has no idea what the correct path is. You
Mhm.
might feel committed to your vision, but you also have to have some sense that like you have no fucking idea. And so just being part of the conversation was joyful, and it was great. So it some came out of that. And I also think, look, I'll be honest, man. A lot of times you get confused. I was doing kind of my community activism, and then you had to pivot to your writing. And I don't know, a lot of times I think like if I wrote more, I would have probably focused more intensely on that and maybe not have been as politically, organized. I don't know. I sometimes think it was as much an outcome of failure as it was of virtue.
Mm. Yeah. Thank you for that. Your last fiction essay in the New Yorker, The Ghost of Gloria Lara, revisits like Junior and his family and the 1980 Dominican Republic embassy siege in Bogota. And so you wrote to the New Yorker in discussing the piece that you're powerfully haunted by the 80s for so many damn reasons. And that's a quote, direct quote. Can you share with us what is it about that time that made it, as you wrote in the New Yorker, a lonely, turbulent decade for you personally, um, and historically important decade to boot?
Yeah. I mean, there's macro and micro, and there's stuff that you kind of like, you're still wrestling with that I'm still wrestling with. I mean, I
Mhm.
think that for me, first and foremost, the most immediate impact was the economic sort of the kind of the way that neoliberalism was asserting itself. Um, and you saw this through the kind of economic policies of the Reagan era, the kind of poverty that was just pervasive. My family, especially. I mean, gee whiz, man. My mom was trying to raise five kids by herself, and it was bad. It was real, real bad. Our marginalization too was pretty
Mhm.
exceptional. I mean, you know, being a person of color from a poor background, being a person of African descent, being an immigrant, none of these things were cute. People didn't even know what the fuck a Dominican was. Our community didn't have the kind of the sort of visibility. We also didn't have the kind of organizations that we had. On the other hand, this was actually kind of interesting, is also the time where you see a lot of creative reactions to these kind of the sort of conservative, oppressive moment. You had in England, um, you had Thatcher in the United States, you had Reagan, you had the absolute serious fear of the Cold War politics leading to a nuclear annihilation.
Mhm.
Um, and so you had activism with that, but you also had a lot of really interesting art shit going on. I mean, as a kid, I'm watching hip hop like actually come up out of focus, not entirely in focus of capitalism. And so people were doing all sorts of weird shit. At the same time, you have, punk living and sort of collapsing, in certain ways, in the kind of the classic punk versus what you end up getting. You had groups like The Clash. And again, it was a time where shit was really wild. And for somebody like me who was reading newspapers religiously because I was a paper boy, but also had a lot of people around me who were kind of getting me hip to the politics of what's happening in the era. My best friend was a very came from it was a Muslim Egyptian very much connected to what was happening in the Middle East. And here I am, 11 and 12 years old, and he's telling me about Palestine. And I have a friend of mine who's an Irish immigrant who's telling me about the Irish Troubles, and his family was very much involved in this.
Mm.
All of it was coming to that, it was coming all together. South Africa was every day in the news. And I'm trying to figure out what to do in a family where there wasn't enough food so that, my mother would tell the boys in the family straight up. It's like, you all won't be eating on Friday.
Mm.
The girls will eat, but you all got to find your way. Do what you can. There's just not that kind of food here. And it all was coming together. I also think that I was coming of age. I was an adolescent. If I'd had the resources that I had now, I probably would have been in some serious therapy. I probably would have been in whatever, would have given some sort of antidepressants.
Mm.
I suffered from an enormous amount of depression in the period. And yet, at the same time, like I said, all this exciting stuff was happening. I was living in Central Jersey. I could see the Verrazano Bridge from the front of our apartment complex. We all, even as teenagers, there's a time when teenagers could do whatever the fuck they wanted in ways that, I mean, you could do it now, but again, I think of the fact that me and my friends at 12 years old would take the bus straight into New York City by ourselves. And
Yeah.
my mom would be like, she would just be like, "Oh, are you alive at midnight?" And if we had a pulse at midnight, it was cool. And I
Yeah.
can't imagine my nephews and nieces doing that now without. So all this stuff was
Yeah, there
happening.
was like an actual freedom there. So it's like the convergence of the freedom and all that was happening led to this really creative period, I think,
For
of
me, it was
creative.
certainly
Yeah.
for me. I mean, I was grateful not to be under surveillance. The fact that
Mm.
parents didn't, this is Generation X. Our parents checked our pulse for most of us, and that was it. And it was awesome. I mean, I loved my parents not trying to be my friends. I just loved that. It gave me so much incredible freedom.
Yeah.
And I loved that we were always out and together and out like young people. It was always in the world. That made a huge difference to me. I was glad for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me ask you something. Like you mentioned like the external influences, right? Your friends being able to kind of bring that knowledge of like other worlds, right? Other cultures to the experience, right? To your youthful experience. What about, were you having conversations at home, like with your family about the politics and the impact that the politics and the policies were having on your ability to all engage in sustenance?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And the final context of the neighborhood I lived in, which was very, very important, is that we were a transient neighborhood. People would come in and out of that. It was a place where you went if your house got burnt down or you got kicked
Mm.
out of your house or you were an immigrant. It was very, very transient housing. And my family stuck around and we had a lot of people, and I mean it, we had a lot. My upstairs neighbor, the neighbor across the street, who, when I was young, were coming out of Vietnam. They were veterans and they were living there.
Wow.
And as kids, we would be like, wow, you were in the military. We didn't know, I didn't have that kind of, consciousness. You would be speaking to them. As for my family, I came from a very, very conservative family. My father, before he left when I was 12, was very pro-dictatorship, was very pro-Balaguer, pro-Trujillo, incredibly awful disciplinarian, authoritarian. And the conversations that we had in our family, I tell you, gee whiz, I don't have any hair now, but it would make your fucking hair fall out. It was so kind of
Wow.
shocking. My old man was the kind of dude who was like, his idea of family time, and this is like no exaggeration, his idea of family time was to take me and my brother to the rifle range to shoot weapons.
Mm.
And I was this very sensitive kid. I did not want to do anything like that. Um, my father did not tolerate anything remotely progressive at all. And he was still, I mean, he was the kind of dude, you did not look him in the eye. You were not, as children, we were not permitted to look him in the eye. We called him Senor. And when he sat down at dinner, he often just he had a license to carry. He would often just put his pistol on the dining room table and eat.
Mm.
And we would all be like, yo, this cat is wild as shit. This motherfucker is gonna blast us, yo. And and he was not a nice kind of character. So we were, yeah, I think we had a lot of fear and a lot of kind of like this was the environment. So political conversation, the only political conversation was the sort of right-wing, dictatorial, semi-genocidal regurgitations that as a
Hmm.
kid I was like, oh shit, this is my world. This is what I'm fucking coming out of. Yeah.
Yeah. And then what was it like when, when it was just you all and your mom?
Again, my mom was very, very like I think very conservative.
She
Yeah, una
too was
campesina,
conservative, see?
but not the same way my father was. I think she was like a social conservative. My father was a member of the military police in the Dominican
Mm.
Republic. My dad was a part of the apparatus. He was like, hey, hey, let's do this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And but my mom was just a campesina, social conservative. I mean, again, she was very ella no hablaba mucho,
Yeah.
una doña, tú sabes,
Yeah.
muy creyente, she was just, my mom was kind of classic in that way. And como, she was from Asua, she was from the Sud, and she was also very, very, very tough person.
Yeah.
Talk about no bullshit. So yeah, I didn't have any of that. Fortunately, I grew up again in a kind of a neighborhood where there were all these different streams happening. A
Yeah.
lot of different politics I got exposed to, and I was open to it. Any other kid would have been like, I got better things to do. But my family was so fucked. I was always looking outside of my family for anything to, give me support.
Yeah, no, that totally resonates with me. For me, it wasn't necessarily political, although I come from a very political family, and so we did have lots of conversations at the dinner table about, progressive ideas, and my family was very much involved in the revolutionary movement here in the DR. But to me, my out was religion, and being exposed to I was the only, like, we were the only Dominican family, right? So when we arrived in Crown Heights, there was another Spanish speaking family that was Puerto Rican, so everybody assumed we were Puerto Rican too, right? So they would call me and my sister Maria, Maria one and Maria two, because they're like, that's all they
Yay.
knew, right? And so it was like I come from sort of like agnostic Catholic upbringing, and honestly even like non-believer family, to then being in Crown Heights where there's like gospel and Baptist music and also Judaism, and it's just, to me, it was like, wow, this is eye-opening. And so being exposed to all of those different religions and the theology and philosophy behind it really, I think, helped me develop a bit of my identity, and a wider perspective and appreciation for differences.
That's
Um,
actually great. I mean, like, shoot, I kind of wish my parents would have taken it anywhere. Any regulation would have been good with a bunch of boys. Well, it was on three boys and two girls, but yeah, that sounds remarkable.
so Juno, switching gears into the world of science fiction, you've stated that to read science fiction and fantasy, and I want to make sure I get this right, is to encounter within it resonances and echoes of the history of the New World, of Dominican specifically. And that science fiction and fantasy stories are obsessed with these questions of power. They're obsessed with racism. They're saturated with like political unconscious, with the dark energy of colonialism. What was the first work of science fiction that first made that real for you, make that cognizant for you?
So, I'm 55, born in 1968. 1977, we get Roots,
Mm.
right? Roots was epochal. Like it was just monumental for anyone of African descent, you know? Um, and it really kind of opened my eyes to a lot that wasn't being taught. You got to understand, man. I think if took a time machine, if I took some of my, again, if I took one of my god kids on a time machine and dropped them off in fucking high school, the high school I went to, they would have been like, oh shit, no information available. You had to
Yeah.
scrap this shit together. But roots, again, we were kids. It was an important touchstone. And so, I suddenly became far more aware of things that I hadn't been aware of in a kind of a visceral sort of way. Popular entertainments can teach us enormous things, and this was one of them.
Mm.
And I began to understand that a lot of what I was into in science fiction had all of these resonances, had all of this other history behind it. I still remember very, very, very clearly becoming aware in fantasy that orcs in Lord of the Rings were being coded as not only of African, kind of coded black, they were also being coded Asian, or in this term, kind of orientalized, right? They had like scimitars and like, eyes and sallow yellow skin. It was bananas, right? And I became aware of that. And then I began to see traces of it all over the place. I find in a lot of the science fiction, popular science fiction, there would be, discussions of, uh, robot or kind of replicant attempts to be free, that they were kind of metaphors, analogies for slavery. And I began to understand, oh shit, these super white replicants in Blade Runner, this is kind of a, this is something about enslavement. And suddenly my eyes began to open up, and I began to become very sensitive about that, and understood that that was these secret or sort of, just obscure narratives or histories were what was holding these things together, giving them, elizability, giving them coherence. There were disavowed histories that were integral to these narratives making sense to us.
Yeah, now I feel like I have to rewatch some of these just to visualize and experience what you're saying. Let me ask you something in relation to that. Given like the Dominican Republic's policies towards Haiti, is there like a particular science fiction world or character that you think parallels that darker aspect of our culture for you?
I mean, this is where it gets wild as shit. Where, I grew up, and I'm from a family, from Aswa, you know, the Sur, and a family who has a lot of kind of connections to the border, right? Um, you know, and it was real bananas when I began to discover how pathologically just malignant the sort of mainstream political, the mainstream politics, the anti-Haitian politics, or the anti-Haitian politics, the anti-Haitianism of our mainstream politics. When I was a kid, and it began to dawn on me how crazy, how that was, I began to understand, or at least began to think, and reflect on, wow, what it's like to be to belong to a group who has been a community is profoundly victimized by racism, colonialism, coloniality, and yet whose elites want to replicate that oppression and objection on another group, on an adjacent group, on a group that they consider, somehow threatening or probably, and that was just astonishing to me. And the idea that, like, groups always figure out a way to, replicate the oppression that victimized them. I think that's narratives that are kind of present. And again, I don't think a lot of times in our sort of popular heroic tradition, people like to think in those terms. People like very cleanly that there's, oh, we've been oppressed and now we're liberated, the end.
Right.
But I still remember John Christopher and his Tripod series, a kind of a young adult book, where at the end of the book, after the human beings liberate themselves from the alien oppressors, they immediately devolve back into their internecine local squabbles, this unity that we held in this kind of science fiction series where the people were like, oh, we've got these aliens that are messing with our planet. We're going to fight them. We're guerrilla fighters. We're going to overthrow them. And as soon as we overthrow them, instead of there being unity, people are like, fuck it. Let's go back to the old way
Right.
of fucking hating on each other and being like, fuck you. And I still remember that final chapter when it all devolved. You spend 3 books with these young adolescent heroes trying to overcome these oppressors. Again, you often saw it a lot in X-Men comic books,
Yeah.
right? Where you saw people who knew better. They were like, oh, it's, we're oppressed. And, certain X-Men characters like we're oppressed and they're being like, fuck it, we're going to oppress right back.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I think it's something, it's a trope that you find, but again, not as popular as one would think in um, the Game of Thrones series. One of the things that's always in the background is how each new wave of settlers in Westeros, in fact, helped oppress and exterminate the group that came before.
Mhm.
And the history of Westeros is like layered with all of these waves of people who come and settle and in some ways kind of push the other group who'd have been the settler before and on and on and on.
Yeah. I mean, you know, it makes me wonder if they've done a very good job of indoctrinating us, right? And so we've to a point where it's so internalized, or if it's just part of our humanity, right?
It's hard to say. I just think our elites have a playbook that's very old and very deep, and it doesn't
Yeah.
seem to matter where it is because very few of our societies have invested in education, and because most of us are not well regulated, we fall for mis and disinformation like that.
Yeah.
Our elites lose no fucking sleep because we are profoundly manipulatable.
Hmm.
And I think that's it. I mean, and social media, if anything, the internet has shown us is that for all of its touted benefits, this has been awesome for political elites and for dictators and for fucking assholes and fascists. It's just
Yeah.
been a cesspool of disinformation and misinformation. And I think we're not good. Look, we're not good at thinking fast.
Hmm.
When it comes to making snap judgments, we're always going to fucking get it
That
wrong.
reminds me of Daniel Kahneman, right?
Joe,
Thinking fast and slow.
man, let me tell you something. Justice doesn't work fast.
No.
And this whole encouraging us all to kind of like think fast, constantly be triggered, constantly be like, has been terrible for us. I think as a planet has been awesome for elites. Let me
Hmm.
tell you, there is no elite who has lost any sleep ever since fucking this most recent iteration of our civilization kicked up. They're like,
Yeah.
awesome. You people are constantly triggered. You people are like always looking to fight. And that's awesome. And that's been bad for us. So I'm not sure it's human nature. I just think that we have elites who've long known that it's much easier to disrupt people and that it's very hard to create solidarities.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Another looming specter that permeates throughout your writing and in both, our Dominican and I would say culture in the US is that of violence and pain and torture. And you wrote in 2016 that colonial power, patriarchal power, capitalist power must always and everywhere be battled because they never ever quit, right? Which is what we were just talking about. Um, so I'm curious, for Dominicans who contend and live with the legacy of Trujillo and Balaguer and their dictatorships, is there is the exorcism of that specter of violence on the personal, national, and global level part of your artistic process? Um, is it also why elevating the voices and narratives of writers of color who bear witness to those legacies so important to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it's very, very personal in the sense that, like, look, I've already revealed to you at the beginning of this is that
Yeah.
I grew up with a father who was directly, sort of flagrantly a supporter of the Trujillato, of Balaguer, of all the nightmare of Los 12 Años,
Mm.
and was very representative. He was an archon, you know, of that whole constellation of politics and policies and discourses, right? Just hegemonic, just derangements that have been just done, that have so eroded our humanities and have so damaged our communities and have just done things to our societies that are going to be hard to repair. And so
Mm.
I think part of what's happening is that I kind of had it, I don't want to say easier, but it was certainly much more kind of familial. Like I had this force that I've had to contend with. Most of us have to deal with our parents and things are, whatever they are. I
Mhm.
think that we all have our legacies from our families and from our cultures. Mine just happened to be sort of starkly dictatorial, and that
Yeah.
made the battle much more personal and much more intimate and much more direct. It's like
Mhm.
our family and our household was very militarized and really kind of just messed up sort of ways. I think that because I lived under the shadow of someone like that, um, I think that the sort of the vernacular, the idiom of the Trujillato was probably, my second language, and I became much
Mhm.
more aware of how it survived, you know, and
Mhm.
um, and how, I think a lot of things that the Trujillato introjected into our society have never been sort of uprooted and confronted and decolonized. And so therefore they're very active, even if they're acted at a level that's almost subliminal. And, I think that I've tried to think about that, to narrativize it, to try to grapple with and wrestle with its long-term consequences, even if I don't always name exactly the forces. Um, as far as my own sort of work, I just look, I've never been a writer who's been all that interested in or an artist who's been all that interested in the roles that I've been sort of given or sort of the people think I have. I've always wanted to be one of many or just to be kind of I enjoy my work when I don't have any attention. For me,
Mm.
I love that there's more voices out there. I love that, again, the role of the teacher, and I've been teaching a long time, is to make oneself irrelevant, to make it so that your students don't need anything that you need to tell them. And I enjoy that. I think I really, really enjoy that. I don't know. I think maybe because my family attention was always negative when you have such a dictatorial father. I just don't, I like that there's other voices. But, you know, this idea of resistance and how we can think about these things, I do think for me, you don't necessarily always have to be with your fists up. It doesn't always have to be an active war, you
Mhm.
know? The quiet resistance, the low key resistance, what James Scott calls anarchist calisthenics, which I've talked about a number of times in various places. I think that that's very useful. It's
Yeah.
like to resist the kind of anti-blackness that our elites wish to foist on us as Dominicans is a lifetime's work. And
Yeah.
you don't always have to hold a sign, but you'd be amazed what little resistance, how that can help within oneself and in your more immediate community.
Right. And also, the acid framing, like lifting up the beauty in our in our culture, right? The African aspects of our culture, right? In the merengue, in the music, in the food, in our diversity, right? Mi pelo rizo, like all of that, I think is another form of resistance, a celebration of the contributions of the African diaspora, right?
100%,
Yeah,
100%. It
yeah.
gives me, you don't understand. It's like I mean, you do understand. I just say that rhetorically, but it's like I love every time I'm out, and I'm in our kind of Dominican universe. It fills me with such joy. First of all, this thing petty and personal
Mm.
that my father's what he represented is losing.
Mhm.
This go straighten your hair, tú tienes pelo malo. Oh yeah, my dad was Mr. Obsessed with pelo malo, and I fucking, it fills me with so much hope because again, it's, as you said, it's just this small choice, and yet it opens up and it represents the choice, the end point of a lifetime of struggle. It
That's
has
right.
enormous resonance.
Mhm. That's right. And so, I think it's a really wonderful segue into your children's book, right? Island Born, which to me is like a beautiful love letter to our island and our culture and to the ancestral legacy of our people. And you write about Lola's story as she draws closer to the heart of her family story and how she comes to understand the truth of her abuela's words. Just because you don't remember a place doesn't mean it's not in you. And so I wanted to ask you, does this beautiful sentiment encapsulate the reality of all immigrants who hold, two entire worlds within them? One that as years go by gets somewhat shrouded and missed, and the other, the everyday reality of the new country and culture. So that's part one of my question. And then the second part of my question is that as someone who has lived in the United States for the greater part of your life, how are you defining or redefining your Dominicanidad?
Right. So the first one, I don't know because I
Mhm.
don't know enough. It's like uh, universal claims are always difficult because
Mhm.
our experiences are so narrow. I know that that's true for me,
Mhm.
and for my immediate friends. So I just kind of wrote to that and hoped anyone else would come. You kind of build a little fire, and if people want to come, they want to come, and if they want to walk on by because there's better fires beckoning. I mean, that's really what art is. It's kind of awesome. I'm not trying to convince anybody, and I'm definitely not someone who stands at the edge of my fire trying to pull people in. I just think two things. One is, being a child is growing up as a child, it doesn't matter how good your family is and how awesome they are, is fucking some scary shit. There's a
Yes.
lot of wonder, there's a lot of joy, even in the best, but it's some scary shit. Kids can read scarier books than what we're feeding them. And so that was one thing that sort of propelled this book. But two is this idea that, like what you just quoted, it's both true on the positive and the negative. That was the
Mm.
joke for me when I was writing this book, is that the dictatorship is in Lola low key, and that the only way that you get to the bad and the good is by confronting it. It's simple
Mhm.
stuff, but if you never talk about it, if you say to children, no, we're only going to ever talk about the positive stuff, that allows the sort of the kind of the hidden, just the hidden poisons of a lot of our kind of toxic politics to leak in unchallenged because you're dike only focusing on the positive, but their kids are, who are these big fucking enormous sponges pulling everything in. And if they're pulling everything in, what they're going to be pulling in is, the kind of the hegemonic politics.
Mhm.
And smuggled into the hegemonic politics is all the horrible shit that we're claiming that we're wanting to keep at bay by focusing on the positive. And so I think that was a lot of the stuff that I was driving at. And
Mm.
also just that, you know, come on, man. Like the same way that the living are comprised of the dead that they never will know or never will meet, those of us who lived our whole lives in a diaspora, you know, we're being directly influenced by these islands that many of us don't know very well, the same way that the earth is being influenced by a moon that's even more distant
Yeah.
than the Dominican Republic. So I felt that that was true. As far as me and my Dominicanidad, look, I keep it real simple. I was born in Santo Domingo. I left when I was little, 6 years old. Um, there is no Dominican test that I will ever pass. There's no, if you've got criteria for what a Dominican is, fail me immediately. I have no interest in conforming to anyone's doctrinary bullshit, to their fucking perejil tests.
Mhm.
I don't give a fuck. Cool. If there's an A Dominican, I'm an F Dominican, and I don't care, because all of these formulas are fucking really weird acts of identitarian violence. They're bullshit. That's not the way communities function. That's not the way communities work. Narratives of consolation, very cruel narratives of consolation.
Mhm.
I have no interest. I like to say I'm just a terrible Dominican. Whatever it is that you think is Dominican, I'm not a part of it. Cool. Now I can be myself,
You can
and
be
now I
yourself.
can belong to my community, because, you know, we have these wild things. I still remember being in school so many years ago and somebody looking at this Dominican kid and saying, "Oh no, pero tú no hablas español, tú estás jodido, tú no eres dominicano, tú eres gringo." And I'm thinking, like, so who the fuck assigned you to be a judge? Like,
Yeah.
I'm like, the last people, let me tell you something. Individuals are the last people who should be in charge of the gates of who we let in for our Dominicanidad.
Mhm. Mhm.
In this way, when it comes to identity, I'm like, that's the nature of a diaspora. There is no possibility for any of us to grasp our immensity. And these kind of simplistic judgments are just fucking fairy tales we tell ourselves, so that we don't have to confront the reality of our utter limitation around what it means to be Dominican.
Mhm.
Dominicanidad defies our ability to understand it. And that's why we have all these fairy tales about what a Dominican is, to comfort us so we can sleep easier, because we don't really want to confront the reality, which is that Dominicanness exceeds us. And that to me is enormously reassuring.
Mhm.
That makes me very, very happy that there is no formula that will ever encompass us. Are there some things that we can say that make us, that we could sort of put our feet down? Like we say that, yes, Dominicans have a certain kind of historical commonality. I can vibe with that, but as soon as the formula is exclusionary and not additive, then I'm not
Mhm.
interested.
Yeah.
I'm cool with Dominicans being like, we are from originally we are from this island. I'm like, cool, as long as the word "and" comes at the end of it.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. I really appreciate that a lot. Because I was faced with similar questions, uh, living in New York. Tú no eres dominicana porque tú no naciste allá. Well, I feel myself to be Dominican, right? That's how I identify. Not only do I identify as Dominican, I identify as an Afro-Dominicana. And that's for me, that's mine. I own that, right? You don't need to believe it. You don't need to reassure me. You don't need to support me. This is mine. This is my reality. And if you want to get with it, great. And if you don't, bueno, pa'
Yeah,
fuera esos demonios, pa' fuera esos demonios. Y seguimos para adelante.
I think and again, I always laugh because I'm like, sometimes I believe this, and this is from my own tiny universe. And I'm not saying this is all Dominican. I'm saying in the Dominican universe that I grew up, I sometimes thought there was nothing more Dominican than saying someone else is not Dominican. It was almost as if, like, at least in the Dominicans I grew up with, I'm not saying all Dominicans. I feel like, man, it's like the Dominicans I grew up with, I must have gotten a very special selection that every one of them secretly wanted to be a border guard, because, bruh, fam, it's crazy. They don't even say hi to you. They're just like, "Oh no, pero tú no eres
Pero tú no
dominicano."
eres dominicano.
I'm like, "Oh, that guarantees me that I'm Dominican. Oh, I'm at home." I'm like, "Damn, yo."
I know that we have, limited time, so I have just a couple of more questions. I recently was reading the Times and I saw that you had been selected to share your own 10 best books of the 21st century. Um, and so I was curious about like, how do you perceive the significance of having, um, of being invited to share like, your selection, and then also the significance of having the brief and wondrous life of Oscar Wilde chosen by three other authors as one of their top picks. What does the recognition mean to you, both personally and professionally?
I mean, it's always nice to be asked to do stuff. I mean, sure, it's cool, and it's funny because I can't speak for everyone else, but there's always a part of me, who, a part of me that I have to keep an eye on, who is like, oh, well, that was really nice. Well, okay, cool. But if they didn't ask you, then what that would mean it's not nice. Like, nothing personal, like, there's never enough to go around with this kind of a claim. So I understand it as a kind of certainly a rare privilege. And I'm glad, something I wrote has moved anybody. Ultimately, I'm 55.
That's
I
young, though.
understand.
That's young.
Okay, cool. I hear you. But all I'm saying is I'm 55. Ultimately, the world looks different to me than it did when I was 25. I understand
Mm,
now that like what matters most about literature is, that if it sustains anyone anywhere in this world, it's cool. All the other stuff goes away. In a few years, who knows where you'll be. But if a book can reach someone, that means the world to me.
mm,
So certainly I'm glad that my colleagues found something good and strong about something I've written. I felt like I got lucky and was in the right place at the right time. I also think it's another one of these things where the present is always trying to like do an end run on the future. We make these
mm.
kind of lists so that we can reassure ourselves that, that what we think about tomorrow has some relevance when, we can check in 50 years from now and look back at these lists and be like, yo, we got it all wrong. And I understand that too. We can't help
Yeah,
ourselves. It's
yeah.
hard. Mortality's hard. We make lists of best books because ultimately mortality is hard. And
Mm.
admitting that we have no idea what tomorrow really needs is just really tough. So I'll just make a list and I'm down with it. Okay. I can hang.
As our time together comes to a close, I wanted to end with your powerful words about radical hope after the 2016 Trump win. And you said that radical hope is our best weapon against despair, even when despair seems justifiable. It makes the survival of the end of your world possible. Only radical hope could have imagined people like us into existence. And we know that by fighting against all odds, we who had nothing, not even our real names, transformed the universe. Our ancestors did this with very little, and we who have more must do the same. This is the joyous destiny of our people, to bury the arc of the moral universe so deep in justice that it will never be undone. And so, as, whew, and this is scary for me, as we, face the real possibility of a re-election of Trump, and as our recent election here in the DR, prominently played on the vitriol against Haiti, do you still believe that radical hope and the strength of our ancestral legacy are how we respond to this moment in time that replays that not so distant past?
I mean, I do. I mean, listen,
Mm,
you know, um, I'm someone who, like many of us, we've been through it. We put up with a lot of fucking injustice and a lot of fucking cruelty. We all have, and life will bring more. Life has a lot of indignities for us coming up, and that's the nature of it. But I just, I, listen, has our hegemons weakened us profoundly? Yeah. have we lost, most of us, the ability to concentrate, the ability to just read a book cover to cover without checking our phones 55 million times? Yeah. Are we more susceptible to kind of twitch judgments, to snap judgments, to mis and disinformation? Yeah. Are we much more likely to want to have short circuits to difficult processes like democracy, like justice, because we think our anger and our rage justify whatever shortcut we need to make? Yeah. But we've also been incredibly resilient, even if it's only a small group of us. We have dealt with storms that are terrible beyond all imagining. I can't see the same way I see that the majority of people will fall for injustice and fall for cruelty. I also see that there's an enormous history of people not falling for injustice and not falling for cruelty and being willing to just stick it out and be as human as possible and hang on long enough for the page to turn. And I believe it. It doesn't mean that we're not going to get nightmares and that the shit isn't bad. The shit's bad, yo. The shit is bad. All right. Well, this is something we're good at. This is something we know real well. Should have been bad a long time. And I try to, I'm somebody who's depressed. I'm someone who suffers from a lot of mental health stuff. And I'm like, we can hang on, we can do this. But we have to just remember that solidarity is the only weapon we have. And we've been taught recently to be quick with throwing solidarity out the window. And we've got to return to a much more humane vision of what it means to be a community. And I think it'll happen, and I think it's been happening. And I guess maybe I'm just an old man, but I believe in us, no matter what. I don't care how fucked up we get and how crazy we act and how fucking, when people send me videos of pro-Trump Dominicans in weird uniforms, okay, yeah, that's discouraging, but at the same time, I'm like, I don't care. I believe in us. I profoundly believe in us, and I think, we are fully possible as human beings.
Thank you so much for that. And thank you so much for joining us on Tambora. It has been a real joy and privilege to have you with us. And I'm really grateful for your insights on the immigrant experience, the significance of, just our Dominican identity in all its forms, the intersection of art and politics to me, and what you shared is just incredibly enriching. And we are really deeply appreciative of your time. So thank you for joining us, and hopefully we'll get to spend some more time together.
No, thank you so much, Erasma. And hey, listen, good luck with that college tour stuff. It's awesome, man. My parents wouldn't even show up to college. This is great. Be safe.
Yeah, we're starting early at 15, but I think he's expressed interest, so we're gonna do it.
Eso que hacen los blancos, fuck that. It's good enough for them. It's good enough for us, yo. Hey,
así es. Mucha suerte con tu ahijada.
Yeah, be safe out there, all right?
Cuídate.
Ciao.
Chao, chao.